Hi, Peter Charles here, Hooked for Life Fly Fishing, and today we're going to tie a bucktail called the Champlain. It's also tied in a trolling version, but this is the casting version we're going to do. The trolling version actually has a trailing hook. It's a bucktail and uses predominant colors very similar to the Mickey fin in the way the colors are arranged. So let's get tying and see how this fly turns out. Our hook today is a size 2 in a 3 extra heavy, 7 extra long streamer hook. Our thread is a 6/0 Veebus in white, and we're going to color this black when we get to the head. The rib calls for gold tinsel, so I'm going to be using a uni mylar in the gold side. The body is yellow floss. The throat is red bucktail. If you're doing a smaller fly, a smaller hook I should say, you could do a red saddle hackle as well. The wing is yellow and white bucktail with yellow over white, and the topping is Peacock herl. So let's get started. Next we tie in our tinsel, and we want to use the gold side, so we tied in silver side showing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie it the length of the thread covered part of the hook. There we go. Couple of wraps, and I'll just move that underneath. Next, our floss. Okay, couple of wraps to hold it. Make sure it's underneath. Now I'm just going to tilt that. I want to keep everything underneath, so I'm going to just turn my vise so I can see that it's staying underneath. Take your time. Now for the floss body, and take a moment to flatten it out as best you can. Avoid that hook point. Unfortunately, this is the only yellow I have, and it has some twists in it, which is a real nuisance to get a flat lay. One of the problems you get into with your floss having a twist to it that won't lay flat is you end up with a body that has a bit of a ropey appearance to it, and I'm afraid I'm going to have that no matter how hard I work on getting rid of these twists. Okay, now for the tinsel, turn to the back, come forward. Now for the throat for underneath. Don't use too much bucktail here. This is a relatively sparse throat. Now we're going to stack it. Another reason why the rotary vise comes in handy: when you're tying a throat, you can invert it. So what I'm going to do is tie this in about the length of the hook. Trim it. Take a soft wrap, pull it back, a couple of tight wraps. Check the position. Bind down. Now at this stage of the game I'll start to put on some black marker, because I found in the past if I started this too late, I would end up with white streaks showing, no matter, or I ended up having to put way too much thread on to cover it up. So I'm going to start with that first. Now for a few strands of white, again, don't overdo it. This wing is going to be longer than the fly. Now one of the things you can do too is you could change over to black thread at this stage if you wanted to. Soft wrap, pull back, I mean tight wraps, get rid of any strays, check to make sure everything's even, looks pretty good. Now to keep that from flying apart too much, we'll put some soft wraps at the back. There, that brings that together. More black. Now I haven't dealt with this in the past, but you can see my bucktail tends to spread a lot. If you look at the pattern books, you'll see your bucktail is really finely packed. From a fishing perspective, I'm not crazy about that. From an artistic perspective, it's nice. It's really nice. But from a fishing perspective, not so much. I like my bucktail to be able to move around and flow in the water. So that means if I really bundle it tightly together, it's going to end up being a little less mobile. So you'll see that I don't use a technique that bundles. I'll put up with that sort of kind of scraggly appearance. It isn't really artistic, but it does, I think, give me a better look in the water. Now for our yellow. This one is a little bit more wild than the white. Right off the bat you can see the difference in the quality between these bucktails. The white being a lot better than the yellow. Okay. Let's check that, see if it's even. A little bit more that way. Yeah, good. Again, that loose wrap at the back, come forward. Now I'm going to trim this off. I'm just showing you a different method here. You can come out, trim it off at an angle. You get into some situations though where you end up with a big lump at the end. And I might end up with a bigger lump at the end with this one, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, some tight wraps here, bind this all down. Quick check to make sure everything's still aligned. Yep, nothing's moved. I have had in the past where I've been going along merrily and then found out that stuff had moved on me, and I've actually unwound the whole thing to be able to bring everything back into line. Sometimes if you want a neat job, you have to. Okay, I'm going to take out 4 or 5 strands of Peacock herl. I'll lay them down with their tips even on my table. Now, if you really wanted to get fussy with this Peacock herl, what you can do is pick only really straight ones and only use those so they line up perfectly with the other. Each Peacock herl is straight and lines up perfectly. But reality is, if you're tying a bunch of flies to go fishing, you know, you're going to rapidly run out of Peacock herl that's nice and straight. So realistically, you're going to end up with some Peacock herl that's less than desirable. Okay, get that in there. And make sure it stays on top. Yes, it has. Now, Peacock herl, when you bind it on, always creates a little bit of fluff, so we're going to have to spend a bit of time winding that down so it doesn't look too ragged. When you get to the back, that soft wrap at the back, come forward. And finally, the whip finish. Now for some head cement. There you go, the Champlain. Now I've dressed this, as I said, as a fishing fly, and not something I put in the shadow box. I've left the bucktail, flared out. I didn't bulk it together, bind it together I should say, so it was all nice and neat. I think it fishes better this way. And as I say, I wasn't particular with the bucktail, I should say the Peacock herl, because let's face it, if we're tying like a dozen of these things, by the time you get to the 7th or 8th one, you've run out a nice straight Peacock herl, so you might as well use what you have. So anyway, there you go, the Champlain. Give it a try. Nice attractive pattern, and I think it will do quite well. Cheers.